They are schedule.
Hello art family, and thanks as always to the new subscribers. For this video, I wanted to take a look at subsurface scatter, at painting an object where light will not just bounce off the object, but sort of pass through it and create a kind of rich glow, and see if we can kind of think about how we can use gouache to make that effect happen. I'm starting off with a value sketch. This is about business card sized, so it's sort of zoomed in. It's about 2.5 by 3.5 or so inches. And I'm just going for the major shapes here. Blocking in large shapes and then using a marker here, I'm indicating in a range of 1 to 4, 1 being the lightest and the white of the page, up to 4 being as dark as I can get. And I'm trying to just take a minute to close an eye and squint at the reference and simplify this. This miniature kind of study will act as a key for the rest of our sketch when we get to the final painting. It's just a way to very quickly, and I'm using a big brush here. This is I think it's an inch flat, or it might be a 3/4 inch flat. But I'm using a big brush working on a small space because it doesn't allow me the luxury of getting into the detail and worrying too much about the finicky things in the sketch. I'm forced to simplify the brush strokes, the shapes, and the value in this case, which I'm choosing to simplify to try to make sure I have a clear and concise statement going into the sketch. The general process, and this is more sort of a survey of what we're going to use for values. It helps to avoid things like knowing that the plate is white, so the temptation is to make it very light. But if we close an eye and squint, there are areas that are much lighter than that. So the way it's going to work is we'll take our reference photo and we'll close an eye and squint at it, and then we're going to kind of run the reference photo through the key, through the value guide. Those are our kind of buckets of value, and we're making the choices to simplify the kind of broad range of values into 4 simple shapes of value. And now going into the sketch, of course, we'll be using color temperature and other stuff will be at play, edges, things like that, where we can create a drama and draw the focus into the scene. But at least I'll know I have the values kind of figured out, simplified, and making sure I have the subdivided darker shapes nested well in a nice kind of cohesive arrangement of value, so we don't have too many disparate little places. We can make sure that our sketch is going to work beforehand and make sure we're getting the contrast that we want. This first stage of sketching, and I'm sketching on Crescent illustration board, so it's quite thick, so it doesn't warp too much when I'm working. And at this point, it's relatively arbitrary, the colors I'm using. So you could use just burnt sienna or just a certain color. You could use a mix of all 3 primaries to make a kind of muddy gray. You could also use just ultramarine or burnt sienna or something where you are working out kind of the shapes. What I kind of wanted to do was sort of tiptoe into the drawing here and take this first opportunity to kind of work out the general silhouette. So kind of looking at the plate as a negative shape and filling that in with the blue with about 80% water in it. And the goal there is I can start to tiptoe into the drawing phase, which is what we're doing now, and kind of set myself up, figure out the composition, figure out where these things meet up, and figure out what the general silhouette is of our object and the space, while also getting rid of the white of the page. Now, some people like to work from the white of the page and just work their way directly into each shape, kind of window shading or painting area by area. I personally like to lay down a kind of stain on the page and work from there. I find it personally a little bit easier to be able to compare and to go up or down with value. Working in this manner now with getting rid of the white of the page I could add lighter bits if I need to, and also kind of continue to work my way darker. I'm trying to block in my big shapes though. That's the main goal of what I'm doing now. And when I'm drawing the curved lines, I'm trying to keep from just swinging wildly for curves. Like there's a thing people tend to do, especially beginners, where they just sort of, like if we're drawing a coffee cup or an ellipse, people will draw like 700 curves and then try to erase back to the one that works. I find it much more effective if you use straight lines in the curves, because then you can find where things line up in like two-dimensional space. So we can pull a straight line and find that the edge of something might touch something else, or there might be an invisible kind of through line from one edge to another edge, and we can build out the drawing that way, kind of triangulating the shapes based on where they line up to each other, and also where they line up to, say, like the halfway point or the thirds on the reference photo, if we're working from a photo. As I block in my shapes, I'm trying to always vary from warm to cool to warm to cool. And I'm trying to make sure that I keep a very rich orange, kind of azo yellow in this case, glow for the one piece of orange that has light passing through it. You can kind of picture like a candle where the wick has gone too low. That's subsurface scatter, or a light behind an ear, or if you hold your hand up to a light and look between your fingers with your fingers closed, you'll see this kind of rich orange glow. That's the subsurface scatter that we're trying to kind of explore here. It's like this kind of rich glow that happens, and I want to figure out how I can elevate the saturation of the piece of orange that's got the light passing through it, and also maintain enough color saturation yet go much darker on the piece that's in shadow, because a lot of it is sort of in shadow. You know, the plate is mostly kind of in a general shadow. There's ambient light kind of around, bouncing all around, which is creating that kind of soft, shifting, warm and cool light everywhere. That's why when I blocked in the plate, I made sure to shift back and forth subtly from warm to cool as I went. I'm trying to use some cool kind of bluish gray for the rind and then for the low light areas in the shadow, because I want to make sure that there's a textural element too, to make this object feel both kind of glowy but also wet and shiny in some areas where it's picking up those little bits of the low light. So it's like a weaker version of a highlight where it gets brighter but not, and lighter but not quite as light as, say, the highlight or the areas in direct light. It's always good at about 85 or 90% when you're done, almost done, to pull the tape, or if you are not taping your sketch, then to leave the room for a little bit and come back so you get fresh eyes. There's a tendency to kind of go down these rabbit holes when you're doing a sketch, and doing that will give you a fresh set of comparison with the stark white if you taped, or if you didn't tape, just leaving the room and coming back will reveal some problems if the sketch isn't quite working for you and you can't figure out where you've gone wrong. Getting a fresh view of the subject will help a lot. Well, that's going to be it for this video, and I will see you in the next one. In the meantime, happy sketching.